Prashasth Baliga. I lead a global cybersecurity team of more than 10 people at Palo Alto Networks Singapore. So Palo Alto Networks is one of the global companies whom I can say as a leader in this segment. So I'm happy to be a part of that organization, also representing them, and happy to be here. So I'm also a CISSP and CCSK certified consultant. So that's a brief background about me, and I also worked in the industry for the past 8 years, and I've specialized in the area of security automation. So that is what we are going to discuss today briefly. And this is a very interactive session, so feel free to unmute yourself and raise the queries that you have, and I will be happy to address them. So let's make it a very interactive session. So I would like to explain now what is the current existing SOC setup. And when I say SOC, for those beginners here, SOC means Security Operations Center. So that is where the constant monitoring of your organizational security threats happens at one place. And that center is called as a SOC center. And if you would ask me, in the current SOC setup, there are hundreds of tools. Starts from your SIM, which is your security incident and event management, be it your traditional firewalls, be it your data loss protection softwares like DLP. Then you have your IDS, IPS, sandboxing for your malware and threat analysis, like your cloud security tools. These days, you might have heard of CASB. And then you have like the threat intel tools like Virus Total. Then we have like EDR, XDR, email security. Wow, thousands of tools, right? Hundreds of them. So what exactly happens is, like, analysts are very overloaded with the bombardment of so many threats coming in from multiple teams, and they are not able to handle it at the rate where they can effectively and efficiently handle these alerts, because of which there are chances that these threats will miss out, which will end up in a breach in an organization, which is something very expensive as well as which is very critical these days. So this is the existing SOC setup. Now, if I have to show you, why do we need an automation? Like I said, right, now with so many threats and others coming in, the analysts are not able to handle it in an efficient way. In a SOC center, maximum will be like max 5 to 10 people handling thousands of alerts on a day-to-day basis, because of which the fatigue happens. It's called as an alert fatigue. At the same time, we are humans, right? We often lack efficiency. The way we do work today will differ from the way we do work tomorrow. So the challenges, if I have to ask, what are the challenges faced today? First one, like I said, the overwhelming number of complex security alerts, be it malicious actors and threat intel data, right? It's too much to consume. And at the end of the day, like they say, right, too much of data as well is treacherous for anyone, be it human skills or be it the organization. There's too much of data incoming. Also, the increased probability of missing an alert. Like I said, there are 10 analysts, for example, which is very good, to be honest, because finding a resource is very tough. Even if they handle, like, let's say 50 alerts per day, each one of them, maximum they could handle is like 500 to 600 alerts. But let's say if there are thousands of alerts, it is sure that they are going to miss out an alert, which is going to be very important to the organization, which will end up being a breach where the data will be exfiltrated, or if there is any sort of reputation damage to the organization. Also, slow response time due to the standardized response capabilities. So each analyst is different from each other. What they try to do is the processes followed by one analyst will differ from another one, which will end up being an inconsistent processes or inconsistent response capabilities whenever there's an attack or whenever there's an event, right? And there are chances that some analysts are extremely responsive and extremely, skilled, whereas the other analyst might not be that skilled, because of which inconsistency in handling the threats. Also, wasting time and resources due to the manual inefficient processes. What do you mean by that is, there are, let's say, phishing alerts which rises in an organization. There will be hundreds, let's say 500 people report a phishing incident. Instead of doing it, like handling it once and remediating it for all the other incidents, what actually happens is the analyst has to go through each and every incident, which might be similar, which is literally redundant process, right? So a lot of time gets wasted on that, because of which, again, we might miss out on something very important. Also, if you'd ask me, the last two reasons being difficulty finding people with the right skill set, right? Again, the market doesn't really have good amount of cybersecurity folks, because of which the organizations have to utilize the I will take up the questions. If any guys have the questions, please feel free to unmute yourself, because it would be slightly tough for me to pick up the chat as well. So again, coming to the point, that difficulty to find the security people with the right skill set, because it is the difficulty faced by every organization these days. And finally, the lack or the visibility across the tools. What do you mean by that is, let's say you got like 100 tools, throwing up alerts now and then. So the analyst is quite confused what to look at and what not to look at. So there's no consolidation of all those alerts at one place, because of which, again, there's too much of fatigue here, right? So these are the underlying challenges which is being faced by these organizations. Now, if you'd ask me, what is the solution? Hey, Prashasth, we are all lost. Now, what do I do? Yes, I've got a solution for that. And that is what is called as an automation, or what do you call the AI and stuff, right? Again, AI is a different segment, but automation is the underlying framework for this. It is called as SOAR. So I'm sure few people would have heard this. Just like SIM, we have a solution now to remediate those alerts. It's called SOAR, which is basically security, orchestration, automation, and response. Three pillars: orchestration, automation, and response. The first pillar being the orchestration. What does the orchestration mean? It's basically something like the heart of the total engine. Like it's like the one which is going and speaking to all the other tools. Let's say I spoke about those 100 tools, which is already there in the SOAR, right? What this SOAR tool does is it goes and connects with all those tools. It goes and speaks to these tools, it tries to inject the data which is being generated from other tools. And in one centralized platform, you're getting all the alerts accumulated. So that is what orchestration does here. Automation. What automation does is you define some predefined rules or playbooks. Here, playbooks is nothing but the workflow. I'm sure we must have seen something called as a flow chart when we are doing our engineering, right? At the first year, we were being exposed to how to write an algorithm, how to write a flow chart. Automation rules and the workflow is nothing but like a playbook, which is like a predefined flow chart you define. If there is some specific alert, let's say phishing alert, how do I handle it? What are the ways which you do in a manual process? How I can automate it? I write those rules, I define it in the format of like a playbook, and then I automate it. And finally, the response. What does a responding mean? Basically, whenever there's an alert, I need to revert it back, right? I need to handle that and I need to remediate it. So again, that element is being handled by the response segment here. So that is why we call it as the three pillars: orchestration, automation, and response. So this is what constitutes your SOAR, which is security, orchestration, automation, and response. Now, if you'd ask me, SOAR the same, whatever the description I gave in a pictorial format, if you see here, SOAR is the centralized element, which will talk to your network, which will talk to your threat intel platforms, which will talk to your more end devices. I would say endpoints. You need your phone, be it your laptops or servers, identity access, even your IAM, right? You can push the policies, when to allocate the resources, what are the rights and privileges you need to provide to a user or to even to a resource, right? This server can access specific resources. Even that you can do. Cloud security, which is very critical these days. With the advent of a lot of cloud tools like AWS, SOAR can actually go and communicate with these AWS or your GCP or any cloud platform. Also the web application firewall, and the app security and the web proxies, right? This is just a high level 10,000 feet description, but literally any device, or be it security or non-security, any device which has got an API. I believe many of us are aware what is an API, which is the application programming interface, right? SOAR can basically go and connect to these tools in a programmatic way, which is like a black box for you guys. But behind what happens is it goes and a lot of Python scripts would have been written, or maybe in Golang, which will go and connect to these tools and try to get all the data in one centralized format. Now, if you see this block diagram, SOAR platform, it goes and speaks to your SIM. Your SIM can be your ArcSight, QRadar, Splunk, which is nothing but a data log retention device, right? Also, it can speak to endpoint devices or your XDR, like Carbon Black or CrowdStrike. It can speak to malware devices like your Palo Alto firewall, like other, like something like a sandboxing, like Cuckoo or Joey Sandbox, FireEye, Blue Code, any tool, right, in the market. Not even that, even your ticketing platforms. I'm sure whenever there's an incident, we go and create tickets, right, in the ITSM platforms. Basically, it can be your ServiceNow, it can be your Jira, it can be Remedy, up to you, whichever you do, or it can even be your internal platforms. I'm sure even the internal platforms these days is exposed to the APIs, right? If you've got an API, you can directly go and connect it. The forensics tools, IAM tools, Okta, or threat intel, like Symantec, and also your vulnerability reports. Let's say you use your Nessus, which is a very famous tool, right? You have scanned your network, you got a vulnerability report. Now you can even import that into your SOAR platform. So what basically it does is it's a two-way communication. It can fetch the alerts. Also, it can remediate and can push the response to these all the tools available in the market. along with your internal tools. So this is the high level overview of what a SOAR does. Now let's get into the SOAR lifecycle, right? What exactly happens when you deploy a SOAR tool in your security operations center?